Hello, my name is Bruce Brousseau, and I am the coordinator for the Michigan Social Studies Olympiad Quiz Bowl. Now, the Quiz Bowl is one of the most popular events at the Olympiad. The Quiz Bowl is actually three different events, one at the elementary level, one at the intermediate level, and one at the senior division level. The events are broken down by elementary, intermediate, and high school. I'm going to focus a little bit on the elementary just to give you an example of what happens during the actual competition. You're going to name your teams, and in this case I'm just going to make it simple and say yellow and red. In the elementary division there are only four categories: early American history, United States geography, Michigan, and current events. And you can also see that there are number values here. These numbers represent the item difficulty. So the easier items are have less value, 5 points, and then as they get harder, their point value increases up to 20 points. Now what I want to show you is an example of what happens during the actual competition when a question reader is interrupted by someone ringing in before the question has been read. And let's assume the question is about Michigan. So when the captain of the team chooses Michigan as the category, and they'll use a 5-point item, say, the question reader will then say, okay, is everyone ready? Here's the question. In what year did Michigan? And someone rings in. At that point, the reader stops reading the question and says, give me your answer. The student who flashed in will then have 4 seconds to give the correct answer. Now let's say, for example, that student's answer was 1801, which is a wrong answer. So then the reader of the question will stop the student and say, I need to throw the question now over to the yellow team. In what year did the state of Michigan officially become a state? Now the yellow team has 6 seconds to answer that question. And let's say they gave the correct answer, which was 1837. Then the scorekeeper will cross off the 5, indicating that that category has already been used. And they will ask the captain of the yellow team, which earned the 5 points, to select the next question. So that's a very brief showing of just what happens in terms of that exchange. During the orientation, we're going to have 45 minutes to answer your questions about this, so don't get too anxious about whether we're going to cover everything in this video. Every team is expected to bring their own lockout system. Now, I'm sitting in a position where typically the question reader would sit, and so I'm in front of the controller for the lockout system. And you'll notice that there are 4 lights on each side arranged in what we call a chevron formation or a V-shaped formation. And these lights really represent where the students would be. You need to make sure for the day of the Olympiad that your team has chosen a captain, because that person needs to sit closest to the question reader. But the reason this is called a lockout system is because once the player pushes their button and their light goes on, it locks everybody else out from answering. As you'll notice, as you move up the categories, in the intermediate level, the categories change. First of all, you have 5 instead of 4. United States history from 1792, so that would be after the Constitution was accepted by Congress, to the year 1877, which is the end of Reconstruction. A geography category called Latin America and Canada. World history, which is from the beginnings until 300 AD. Eastern Hemisphere, and again, current events. Now, in this case, it's at the national level. Then at the high school level, or what we call the senior division, you have United States history, and that would be from 1870, so shortly after the Civil War, to the present. Civics and government, world history and geography from 300 AD into the present. Economics, and again, current events. But in this case, it's the world level. The reason I'm making a distinction between national and world is because about 90% of your current events questions will come from a website called NewsBrain. And if I haven't already contacted you about this, you need to check out my email at the end of this video and contact me for more information about how you can get access to that website. And what we're using from that website is what they call their weekly print game. So you need to be aware of that, and your students should know the kinds of questions that are asked during that game. Another new feature of this year's Quiz Bowl is that we are using this book to basically cover all of the possible American and United States history questions. We are compiling lists of topics. There will be 50 topics at the elementary level, 50 at the intermediate level, and 100 at the high school level that are drawn from this book. So I strongly encourage you to get a copy of this for your library so that your Quiz Bowl teams can study it. Now let me just jump forward now and show you what happens in terms of the rounds that we need to go through for determining who is going to win the gold, silver, and bronze medals. There are going to be 2 preliminary rounds. We take the schools and we put them in alphabetical order basically, and we just match them up randomly in that sense. So in this case it would be Indiana University against Michigan State, and in round 1 Indiana received 90 points in total and Michigan State received 105. Northwestern and Ohio State, Northwestern 95, Ohio State 100. So you can see what's going on. When these 2 teams are competing against each other, they're going to get different point values. Now in round 2, what happens is we take the highest scoring school, which in this case was the University of Iowa, and we match it against the second highest scoring school, which happened to be MSU. So they end up at the top of the list, competing against each other. And then Ohio State and Illinois, so you notice Ohio State got 100, and Illinois also got 100. So they'll be matched up together. And the idea is in that second round, we're trying to match the teams that have about equal ability in terms of their knowledge of the social studies content. Each school, again, will receive another set of points. So in this case, when Iowa went up against MSU, they got 90 points. MSU got 110. OSU got 110. Illinois got 60. Okay, and so it goes down the line like this. Now what I want to show is then we take these 2 scores from the preliminary rounds and we combine them to give a total for those 2 rounds. It's this total that determines which schools are actually going to be seeded against each other in the medal round. Now that the preliminary rounds are over, we take the scores from the first round and the second round and add them together to determine which schools are going to be seated in the championship bracket. So notice that Michigan State ended up with 215 points, which was the highest total score, and therefore they are the number 1 seed, so they move over into this position. Ohio State ended up with 210 points, and they are in the 2nd seed position, so they're at the top of the bottom of this bracket. Then the University of Michigan had a total of 200 points. They end up in 3rd place. And I'm going to point out what happens to the rest of the seeds now. Illinois ended up in 8th place with a total of 160 points. So they're going to go head-to-head against MSU. Nebraska ended up in 6th place, and they're going to go up against Michigan. Northwestern was 7th. They faced Ohio State in the quarterfinal. And then Iowa was 4th, and Indiana University was 5th, as you can see. So they're at the bottom of that bracket. So basically now, after that round of competition, you're going to move to the schools that make it to the semifinal round. And in this case, you can see that MSU moves forward, as does Nebraska, Ohio State, and Iowa. Okay? So in the final round, to determine who's going to go up for the medals, we have MSU moving forward and Ohio State moving into the next bracket. So right now, these are seeded 1 and 2, and you'll notice that the losers from the semifinal round move over into what we call a consolation bracket. So they're going to compete for the bronze medal. So who's going to win in our tournament? Well, let's see. It's Ohio State getting the gold medal, Michigan State getting the silver medal, and Nebraska winning the bronze. So that's basically a very quick overview of what happens during the Quiz Bowl competition. Now, if you have any further questions about this or any other event in the on-site Olympiad, I want you to contact our website, www.mcssmi.org, or send me an email directly at bruce.bruceau@gmail.com. And thank you very much for your attention.